The morning started like any other Tuesday in Detroit when 12-year-old Amy Walsh walked to school with her younger brother Tom. By lunchtime, both children had vanished along with 37 other kids from schools across the city. No alarm sounded, no witnesses saw anything unusual, and security cameras showed nothing but empty hallways where children should have been walking. 3 months had passed since humanity made first contact with the beings who called themselves the Galactic Confederation. The massive ships that appeared over major cities brought promises of peace, technology, and a bright future among the stars. Representatives from 12 different alien species stood before the United Nations and spoke of friendship, trade, and the benefits of joining their advanced civilization. Commander Alex Rivers had been skeptical from the beginning. As head of the newly formed Human Defense Initiative, he spent his days reviewing reports that painted a disturbing picture. Children were disappearing at an alarming rate across the globe, but the pattern was so subtle that most governments attributed it to coincidence or improved record keeping, revealing problems that had always existed. The aliens were helpful whenever asked about the missing children. They offered advanced scanning technology to help locate the missing kids and provided psychological counselors for grieving families. Their concerns seemed genuine, their offers of assistance generous beyond measure. Yet the disappearances continued to climb. Rivers sat in his office reviewing the latest numbers when Dr. Michelle Park knocked on his door. She carried a tablet filled with data that had kept her awake for 3 straight nights. Her research team had been analyzing the disappearance patterns using alien-provided technology, and what they found defied every statistical model. "The children aren't being taken randomly," she said as she placed the tablet on his desk. "Every single missing child scores in the top 15% for adaptability, creativity, and emotional resilience. The aliens somehow identified the most psychologically flexible children on Earth before they even made contact." Rivers studied the data while Dr. Park continued her explanation. The missing children came from every continent, every economic background, every culture. The only common factor was their exceptional ability to adapt to new situations and recover from trauma. It was as if someone had spent years studying human psychology and identified the exact traits they wanted to harvest. "There's more," Dr. Park said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I've been monitoring electromagnetic signatures around the disappearance sites. Every location shows residual traces of the same energy pattern found in alien transport technology. They're taking our children, Alex." The evidence was overwhelming, but Rivers knew they needed proof that would convince world leaders. The Confederation had spent months building trust and friendship with human governments. Any accusation without absolute proof would be dismissed as paranoia or xenophobia. 2 weeks later, that proof came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Maria Santos was monitoring deep space communications when she detected an encrypted transmission originating from behind the moon. The signal was faint and used compression algorithms that took her team 4 days to decode. What they found in that transmission changed everything. Detailed medical reports described human children as exceptional specimens with unprecedented neural plasticity. The reports praised the efficiency of the collection process and recommended accelerated harvesting. Before human authorities became suspicious, Overseer Tan, an aquatic being from the species known as the Depths, authored most of the reports. His clinical descriptions treated human children like laboratory animals, noting their remarkable ability to maintain psychological stability under experimental conditions, and their superior adaptation rates compared to previously harvested species. The most horrifying revelation came in a section titled Historical Context. The Confederation had been conducting these collection operations for over 2,000 years. 43 different species had been subjected to child harvesting, with the young ones used for something called consciousness, mapping, and transfer protocols. Rivers immediately contacted President Wilson with the decoded transmissions. Within hours, a joint task force of military and intelligence personnel was working around the clock to locate the source of the signals. Advanced telescopes and scanning Equipment pointed toward Luna's dark side, searching for any trace of alien activity. They found it 3 days later. A massive ship, nearly 2 kilometers long, sat in a crater on the moon's far side. The vessel was completely invisible to normal detection methods, using some form of advanced stealth technology that bent light and electromagnetic radiation around its hull. Only by following the communication signals were they able to pinpoint its location. Reconnaissance drones launched in secret provided images that haunted everyone who saw them. Through transparent sections of the ship's hull, they could see rows upon rows of cylindrical chambers. Each chamber contained a small figure suspended in some kind of fluid. The figures were clearly human children, connected to monitoring equipment by thin cables. Dr. Park's analysis of the drone footage estimated over 10,000 children aboard the ship. Life signs indicated they were alive but in some form of induced coma. Preliminary scans detected unusual neural activity, as if their minds were being actively monitored or manipulated. The discovery prompted an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. World leaders who had welcomed the aliens with open arms now faced the reality that their new friends had been systematically kidnapping human children for months. The evidence was undeniable, the implications terrifying. Ambassador Keth, the Confederation's chief representative to Earth, responded to human concerns with what seemed like genuine confusion. He explained that the Confederation had always conducted biological surveys of species before formal contact. These surveys helped them understand new civilizations and prepare appropriate diplomatic protocols. When pressed about the children, Keth's response chilled every human in the room. He described the young ones as valuable research subjects whose unique cognitive properties made them ideal for advanced scientific study. He seemed genuinely puzzled by human distress, noting that other species had been honored to contribute to Confederation research. Rivers realized with growing horror that the aliens saw nothing wrong with what they were doing. To them, humans were a primitive species that should feel grateful for the opportunity to contribute to advanced galactic science. The children were just specimens, no different from lab rats in a university research facility. The session ended with humanity's first ultimatum to an alien species. President Wilson, speaking for all of Earth's governments, demanded the immediate return of all human children. The Confederation had 72 hours to comply, or face consequences they couldn't imagine. Ambassador Keth's final statement proved how little the aliens understood about human nature. He smiled with what might have been meant as reassurance and promised to consider the request while continuing their important research. After all, he noted, the children were providing valuable data that would benefit the entire galaxy. As the alien delegation left the United Nations building, Rivers stood at his window watching their transport rise into the night sky. Somewhere above them, 10,000 human children floated in alien chambers while machines mapped their minds for purposes humanity was only beginning to understand. The 72-hour countdown had begun. Dawn broke over Washington, D.C. as President Maria Wilson walked into the Oval Office carrying the weight of 10,000 missing children on her shoulders. The secure phone had been ringing all night with calls from world leaders, all asking the same question: what happens when the 72-hour deadline expires? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. At 6:47 a.m. Eastern Time, every television network, radio station, and internet service on Earth received the same transmission. Ambassador Keth appeared on screens worldwide, his alien features calm and composed as he delivered what he clearly believed was a reasonable compromise. "People of Earth," he began in his mechanical translator voice, "the Confederation values our new friendship and wishes to address your concerns about the research subjects. We are prepared to return 1,000 of your young ones as a gesture of goodwill. In exchange, humanity will formally join the Confederation as a junior member species and provide 50,000 adult volunteers for our ongoing scientific programs." The transmission continued for another 10 minutes, with Keth explaining how honored humanity should feel to contribute to galactic civilization. He described the consciousness transfer research as a breakthrough that would preserve the essence of inferior species long after their physical forms became obsolete. The children were helping to create something greater than any individual race could achieve alone. President Wilson turned off the television and reached for her phone. Within minutes, she was connected to every major world leader in a secure conference call that would reshape humanity's future. Prime Minister Thompson of Britain spoke first, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. 10,000 children for 1,000 returned, and they want 50,000 adults in exchange. He said, "They're treating our children like a commodity to be bartered." Chancellor Mueller from Germany was more direct. "My intelligence services estimate we have nuclear weapons capable of reaching that ship behind the moon. I suggest we use them." "Nuclear weapons won't work against their shielding technology," President Wilson replied. "But Dr. Park's team has been studying their systems. We might have other options." The call lasted 3 hours as humanity's leaders confronted a reality they had never imagined. An alien civilization that viewed them as livestock had stolen their children and expected gratitude for the privilege. Traditional diplomacy was useless against beings who saw humans as experimental animals. Dr. Thomas Reed had been working without sleep for 4 days, studying every piece of alien technology he could access. His laboratory looked like a disaster zone with disassembled alien devices scattered across every surface. But his exhaustion vanished when he made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden within the alien communication systems were encrypted files that told a story spanning 2,000 years. The Confederation had refined their child harvesting techniques across dozens of worlds, always taking the most adaptable young ones from species they considered primitive. The consciousness transfer process required developing minds that could adapt to multiple neural pathways. Most species yielded useful subjects at a rate of about 12%. Human children showed adaptation rates of nearly 90%, making them the most valuable specimens the Confederation had ever discovered. The files revealed plans to harvest an entire generation of human children before moving to full-scale consciousness farming operations. Dr. Reed's hands shook as he read reports describing previous harvesting operations. The Confederation had wiped out the youth of 43 different civilizations, always offering the same bargain: accept junior membership and provide volunteers or face extinction. Every species had eventually submitted, allowing their children to be taken in exchange for advanced technology and empty promises of partnership. General Patricia Knox reviewed the intelligence reports while her staff prepared humanity's military response. The hastily formed Earth Defense Force was a patchwork of personnel from every nation's military, united by a single mission: bring the children home by any means necessary. "They're expecting us to negotiate," she told her assembled officers. "Every species they've encountered follows the same pattern: outrage, demands for return, gradual acceptance of compromise, eventual submission. They have no idea what they're dealing with." The alien technology captured during previous encounters was being reverse-engineered at facilities across the globe. Human engineers worked with a desperation that led to breakthroughs in weeks that should have taken years. The stolen children provided motivation that drove researchers beyond normal human limitations. Meanwhile, production facilities worldwide began retooling for war. Automotive plants started producing spacecraft components, electronics manufacturers switched to weapon systems, and pharmaceutical companies developed biological agents tailored to alien physiology. The transformation was unlike anything in human history. The Confederation's second message arrived exactly 60 hours after their first ultimatum. This time, Ambassador Keth appeared less composed. Human silence had clearly confused him, as previous species had responded with desperate negotiation attempts by this point. "People of Earth," he said, "we have detected unusual industrial activity across your planet. Please understand that any aggressive action will result in the immediate termination of the research subjects. We strongly advise acceptance of our generous offer while it remains available." President Wilson's response was broadcast globally 15 minutes later. She sat behind the Oval Office desk wearing a black dress that had belonged to her daughter, one of the missing children. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the fury of every parent on Earth. "To the beings who call themselves the Galactic Confederation," she began, "you have taken our children. You have treated them like laboratory animals. You have offered to return a fraction of them in exchange for more victims. Your offer is rejected?" She paused, looking directly into the camera as if she could see the aliens watching from their ships. "You seem to believe that humans will follow the same pattern as other species you have victimized. You are mistaken. We are not like the others." The President stood, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You have 12 hours to begin returning all human children, unharmed and unaltered. Every hour you delay, our response becomes more severe. Every day you keep them, more of your people die. Every week you maintain this course, entire worlds of your Confederation burn." She stepped closer to the camera, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow sounded more threatening than any shout. "We are the species that protects its young above all else. Tests that resolve at your own extinction." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in a silence that felt like the pause between lightning and thunder. In military facilities across the planet, soldiers made final preparations for humanity's first interstellar war. In laboratories, scientists put finishing touches on weapons designed specifically to cause alien suffering. In homes around the world, parents looked at photos of missing children and whispered promises into the darkness. The deadline passed without response from the Confederation. At 12:01 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Admiral Lucas Grant received the authorization codes that would launch Operation Bright Light. 50 human spacecraft, built from reverse-engineered alien technology and powered by pure parental fury, began their acceleration toward the moon, behind Luna's dark side. The massive Confederation collection ship detected incoming vessels and powered up defensive systems. Overseer Tan reviewed the human approach vectors with what might have been amusement. The primitive species was actually attacking, despite having no realistic chance of success. He had no way of knowing that the humans hadn't come to negotiate or rescue their young ones through diplomacy. They had come to demonstrate what happened to anyone who touched human children. The war that would consume the galaxy was about to begin with a simple message. Some things are worth dying for, and human children are worth killing for. The first human ships reached the hidden Confederation vessel at 3:14 a.m., their hulls gleaming with modifications that would have been impossible months earlier. Captain Emma Stone commanded the lead vessel, a converted cargo hauler now bristling with weapons reverse-engineered from captured alien technology. Her crew consisted entirely of volunteers who had lost children to the harvesting operations. Stone had been a commercial pilot before her 8-year-old daughter Lisa vanished from a school field trip. Now she guided humanity's first warship through the vacuum toward an enemy that considered human children to be research specimens. The transition from hauling freight to hunting aliens felt surprisingly natural. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer, a former NASA engineer whose twin boys had disappeared from a summer camp in Colorado. "Alien vessel is 2 kilometers long, minimal defensive activity detected. They don't seem to consider us a threat." The Confederation ship hung motionless in the lunar shadow, its stealth systems designed to hide from primitive detection methods. The aliens aboard had been monitoring human communications and concluded that the approaching vessels were probably carrying diplomatic personnel for last-minute negotiations. Every previous species had followed this pattern. Overseer Tan reviewed tactical reports with growing confusion. The human ships were approaching at attack vectors, but their energy signatures suggested minimal armament. Perhaps the primitive species was attempting some form of suicide ramming attack. Though such tactics seemed wastefully emotional even for humans, Captain Stone opened communications with the alien vessel, her voice calm despite the rage burning in her chest. "Confederation ship, this is the human vessel Liberty. You are holding 10,000 human children against their will. Release them immediately and prepare to be boarded for inspection." The response came through automated translation systems, Overseer Tan's voice carrying what sounded like patronizing amusement. Human vessel Liberty, you are not equipped for military engagement. Withdraw to safe distance and prepare to receive. Diplomatic representatives. Your young ones are valuable research subjects and will not be returned without proper compensation. Stone looked at her crew, seeing her own fury reflected in their faces. Every person aboard the Liberty had volunteered for what was essentially a suicide mission, driven by the simple truth that some things mattered more than survival. The rescue of human children was one of those things. All ships, she broadcast to the human fleet, weapons free. Show these alien bastards what happens when you touch our kids. The battle that followed lasted only 17 minutes, but those 17 minutes announced humanity's arrival as a galactic power. Human ships moved with tactics no civilized species would consider, ramming alien vessels while their crews screamed names of missing children. Suicide bombers guided ships, loaded with nuclear warheads directly into alien defensive positions. The Confederation crew found themselves facing an enemy that treated death as an acceptable outcome as long as they inflicted maximum damage first. Human pilots who should have ejected instead rode their destroyed ships into alien hulls. Boarding parties that should have retreated instead fought room to room until every last human was dead or victorious. Captain Stone's ship punched through the alien hull with a combination of conventional weapons and sheer determination. Her boarding party, armed with weapons designed to cause maximum suffering to alien physiology, carved through defensive positions with methodical brutality. They weren't just trying to rescue children. They were demonstrating the price of harming them. The breakthrough came when Stone's team reached the main containment area. What they found there would haunt human nightmares for generations while simultaneously fueling their fury. Thousands of cylindrical chambers filled a space larger than an aircraft carrier hangar, each containing a human child floating in alien fluid. Monitoring equipment surrounded every chamber, displaying neural activity patterns and biological data. The children were alive but completely unconscious, their minds being slowly mapped and recorded by alien technology. Cables ran from their skulls to massive processing units that translated human consciousness into digital formats. Dr. Sarah Kim, the expedition's medical officer, began emergency procedures to disconnect the children from the alien machinery. Her hands shook as she worked, not from fear but from rage at seeing her own species treated like laboratory specimens. Each child she freed was another small victory against beings who saw humans as nothing more than interesting animals. "Captain," called Sergeant Mike Torres from across the chamber, "we've got a problem. Some of these kids have been in the process too long. The alien machinery has already started copying their consciousness patterns. They're dying even as we disconnect them." Stone moved to where Torres stood beside a chamber containing a girl who couldn't have been older than 10. The monitoring equipment showed neural activity that was clearly artificial, her natural brainwaves being slowly replaced by synthetic patterns. The consciousness transfer process was irreversible once it reached a certain point. "How many?" Stone asked, though she dreaded the answer. Dr. Kim checked readings from chamber after chamber, her expression growing grimmer with each assessment. "At least 400 children are too far into the process to save. The aliens have been experimenting with different extraction speeds, and some kids have been connected for months." The revelation that hundreds of children were already lost sent shockwaves through the boarding party. These weren't just missing children who could be rescued. They were human beings who had been murdered by alien science while their families hoped for their return. The distinction transformed rescue mission into something much darker. 10. Stone contacted the other human ships with her findings. "We've secured approximately 6,500 children who can be saved. 400 are too far into the consciousness transfer process to survive disconnection. We're bringing everyone home, but some of our kids are coming back in coffins." The response from Earth was immediate and unanimous. Every human government declared the consciousness transfer experiments to be acts of genocide. The aliens hadn't just kidnapped children. They had methodically murdered them while copying their minds for unknown purposes. The Confederation had crossed a line that humanity would never forgive. Admiral Grant's voice came through the communication system, his words carrying the weight of species-wide fury. Captain Stone, secure all alien technology and personnel. We need to understand the full scope of their operations. And Captain? Yes, Admiral? The rules of engagement just changed. These aliens declared war on human children. From this moment forward, we respond accordingly. The rescued children began waking up as medical teams worked to reverse the effects of alien sedation systems. Most were confused and frightened, asking for their parents and wondering where they were. The older children remembered being taken, but had no memory of the time spent in alien chambers. One 12-year-old boy named David grabbed Stone's arm as she passed his medical station. His eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and anger that seemed far too mature for his age. Captain, did they hurt other kids too, from other planets? Stone knelt beside his stretcher, choosing her words carefully. Yes, David, they did this. To children from many different worlds for a very long time. The boy's grip tightened on her arm. Are you going to stop them? She looked at the child who had survived humanity's first encounter with galactic evil, seeing in his face the determination that defined their species. Yes, we are. We're going to make sure they never hurt any children ever again. As the Liberty and other human ships began their return to Earth, Overseer Tan transmitted one final message to the human fleet. His voice carried none of its previous condescension, replaced by something approaching concern. Human vessels, you have interfered with lawful Confederation research operations. This aggressive action will result in severe consequences for your species. We strongly advise immediate negotiation to prevent escalation. Captain Stone's response was broadcast not just to the alien ship but to every human settlement in the solar system. Overseer Tan, you kidnapped our children and murdered 400 of them in your experiments. Negotiation ended when you declared war on human families. What happens next isn't escalation, it's justice. The journey back to Earth took 18 hours, during which human leaders received detailed reports about the scope of alien operations, the consciousness transfer technology, the systematic nature of child harvesting, and the evidence of similar operations across dozens of worlds painted a picture that demanded response beyond simple rescue missions. As the rescued children were reunited with their families, their testimonies revealed the full horror of Confederation research programs. They described other species' children in similar chambers, spoke of aliens discussing plans for expanded harvesting operations, and provided intelligence that would guide humanity's next phase of response. The 400 children who died during the consciousness transfer process were given state funerals attended by world leaders. Their coffins were draped with flags representing all of humanity, and their names were engraved on monuments that would remind future generations why the galaxy burned. President Wilson addressed the United Nations one final time before humanity abandoned diplomacy in favor of total war. Her speech was brief, her words chosen with the precision of someone announcing the beginning of interstellar genocide. The Galactic Confederation has declared war on human children. They have murdered our young ones in the name of science and threatened to do the same to children of other species across the galaxy. Today, humanity makes a promise to every parent in the universe. We will find every alien involved in these operations and we will end them. The stars themselves will burn before we allow another child to suffer at their hands. The final message from the Confederation came 12 hours later. Ambassador Keth appeared on global broadcasts one last time, his alien features showing what might have been genuine fear. Humans of Earth, the Confederation offers final terms. Return all captured technology and personnel. Accept junior membership in our organization. Provide compensation for damaged research facilities. In exchange, no further action will be taken against your species. The response came not from world leaders but from the parents of the 400 murdered children. They had requested the right to answer the alien ultimatum, and their message was broadcast from the steps of the memorial bearing their children's names. To the beings who killed our babies, said Michael Torres, father of 6-year-old Rosa, who died during consciousness transfer, you offer terms to the people you've wronged. You demand compensation from the families you've destroyed. You threaten the parents whose children you've murdered. He was joined by other parents, their voices joining together as they delivered humanity's final diplomatic statement. We don't negotiate with child killers. We don't bargain with species that consider our babies to be experimental animals. We end you. The broadcast concluded with a simple image, a star map showing every known Confederation world. Each star began pulsing red, one by one, until the entire display looked like a field of blood against the darkness of space. The message was clear to anyone familiar with human military symbolism. Humanity had just marked every alien world for destruction. 6 months after the Luna rescue, Earth resembled a planet preparing for the end of the world. Every major city hummed with industrial activity as humanity converted peaceful infrastructure into instruments of war. The transformation was unlike anything in recorded history. Driven by a fury that transcended national boundaries and political differences, Dr. Thomas Reed stood in his expanded laboratory, surrounded by weapons that would have been impossible to imagine before first contact. His team had spent months studying captured alien physiology, developing biological agents specifically designed to cause maximum suffering to each of the 12 Confederation species. The weapons weren't meant to kill quickly. They were engineered to inflict prolonged agony. The neurological disruptors are ready for field testing, reported Dr. Jennifer Walsh, whose daughter Amy had been among the rescued children. These compounds will cause permanent neural damage to the depth species while leaving their consciousness intact. They'll remain aware while losing all motor function over a period of weeks. Reed nodded as he reviewed similar weapons designed for the other 11 species. Respiratory agents that would slowly suffocate the bird-like soaring ones. Cellular dissolution compounds that would cause the rock-based eternal builders to crumble while still conscious. Genetic viruses that would unravel the crystalline structure of the living gems. Each weapon represented months of research driven by parental rage and refined by scientific precision. The international community had suspended all ethical guidelines regarding weapons development when dealing with child murderers. The Geneva Conventions no longer applied to beings who had declared war on human families. Admiral Lucas Grant reviewed fleet deployment schedules from his command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains. The first human deep space fleet was nearly ready for deployment, 50 ships carrying 20,000 personnel, all volunteers who had lost children to alien harvesting operations. They called themselves the Bright Light Expeditionary Force, named after every parent's promise to leave the light on until their children came home. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever built. Constructed from reverse-engineered alien technology and powered by fusion reactors that pushed theoretical limits, they were designed for one purpose: delivering death to child killers across the galaxy. Each vessel carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet and biological weapons tailored to alien physiology. Grant had lost his own grandson to the consciousness transfer experiments. The 8-year-old boy had been too far into the process to save, dying while machines copied his mind for alien research purposes. The Admiral's dedication to the coming war was personal, professional, and absolute. Fleet status report, he requested from his operations officer, Commander Lisa Park, sister to one of the murdered children. Consulted her displays with the efficiency of someone who had transformed grief into deadly competence. All 50 ships are spaceworthy and fully equipped. Personnel are completing final training exercises. We'll be ready for launch in 72 hours. The target for humanity's first deep space military operation was the Proxima Research Facility, identified through intelligence gathered from rescued children and captured alien personnel. The complex was reportedly the Confederation's primary consciousness transfer research center, containing children from 47 different species, including over 8,000 humans. Lieutenant Maria Santos had spent months interrogating captured aliens, using techniques that would have violated every human rights convention before the child murders. The aliens eventually revealed the scope of their operations, a galaxy-spanning network of research facilities, where young beings from dozens of species were systematically harvested for consciousness transfer experiments, the most horrifying revelation was the Confederation's ultimate goal. They planned to create an army of synthetic beings using consciousness patterns stolen from children across the galaxy. The young minds were chosen specifically for their adaptability, providing the flexibility needed for artificial beings that could perform any task. Human children had proven to be the most valuable subjects ever discovered, with adaptation rates approaching 100%. The Confederation had accelerated their harvesting operations on Earth, planning to extract consciousness patterns from an entire generation before humanity became technologically capable of effective resistance. President Wilson addressed the United Nations for what would be the final time before humanity abandoned diplomacy entirely. The assembly hall was filled with representatives whose own countries had lost children to alien harvesting, creating a unity of purpose that transcended traditional political divisions. 6 months ago, we learned that beings from the stars had been stealing our children, she began, her voice carrying the weight of species-wide grief. We discovered that these aliens view our young ones as experimental animals, no different from laboratory mice. We found children from 47 different species being slowly murdered in the name of galactic science. She paused, looking out at representatives who had seen the footage from the lunar rescue mission. The images of children floating in alien chambers while machines mapped their consciousness had galvanized humanity beyond mere anger into something far more dangerous: absolute resolve. Today, I announce the end of diplomatic relations with the Galactic Confederation. Today, humanity begins Operation Bright Light. Our mission to rescue every stolen child and eliminate every being responsible for these crimes. Today we prove that some species will burn the galaxy rather than allow their young to be harmed. The first deep space battle occurred 3 weeks later when Admiral Grant's fleet encountered Confederation forces guarding the Proxima research facility. The aliens expected negotiations or perhaps limited military action designed to rescue human children specifically. They had no conceptual framework for understanding an enemy that viewed the situation in absolute terms. The battle demonstrated humanity's terrifying adaptation to interstellar warfare. Human ships used tactics that no civilized species would consider, ramming attacks by crews who had sworn blood oaths, boarding actions led by parents whose children had been murdered, suicide runs by pilots who screamed names of the dead while destroying alien vessels. Commander Tom Williams led the assault on the main research facility, his team armed with weapons designed specifically to cause alien suffering. They had trained for months in close-quarters combat against creatures who considered human children to be expendable research subjects. The training had focused on inflicting maximum pain while keeping enemies alive for extended interrogation. The facility contained horrors beyond imagination. Massive chambers held children from species across the galaxy, all connected to consciousness transfer machinery that slowly copied their minds while their bodies were prepared for disposal. Human children made up the largest group, but representatives from dozens of other species floated in the alien fluid. Dr. Emily Chun, the expedition's chief medical officer, worked frantically to disconnect children from the alien machinery, while her security team eliminated facility personnel. Many of the human children had been connected for months, their consciousness patterns partially transferred to artificial storage systems. How many can we save? Williams asked as his team secured the facility level by level. Chun checked readings from chamber after chamber, her expression growing darker with each assessment. Maybe 6,000 humans out of 8,000 total. The others have been in the process too long. The aliens have been accelerating the experiments since the Luna rescue, trying to complete as many transfers as possible before we could interfere. The revelation that 2,000 more children had been murdered drove the human forces beyond military professionalism into something approaching primal fury. These weren't enemy soldiers to be defeated. They were beings who had declared war on human families and were systematically murdering children even as rescue forces approached. The interrogation of captured facility personnel revealed the full scope of Confederation operations. Research centers on 17 different worlds, mobile harvesting fleets targeting primitive species, and detailed plans for consciousness farming. Operations that would treat entire populations like livestock. Overseer Tan, captured during the facility assault, provided intelligence that changed humanity's understanding of their enemy. The Confederation had been harvesting children for over 2 millennia, building a vast database of consciousness. Patterns from millions of young beings. They viewed themselves as preserving the essence of inferior species while advancing galactic civilization. Admiral Grant's interrogation of Tan was broadcast to every human settlement, showing the galaxy what happened when alien species declared war on human children. The Overseer's clinical descriptions of consciousness transfer procedures, his casual references to murdered children as processed specimens, and his apparent confusion about human anger provided the final justification for what came next. "You've harvested children from dozens of species over thousands of years," Grant said as cameras recorded every word. "You've murdered millions of young beings and stored their consciousness patterns like library books. You did all of this in the name of galactic advancement." Tan's response showed the fundamental disconnect between human and alien thinking. The primitive species were honored to contribute to Confederation research. Their young ones provided valuable data while serving the greater good of galactic civilization. Your emotional response to routine scientific procedures is irrational and counterproductive. Grant leaned closer to the alien, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow conveyed more menace than any shout. "Those primitive species didn't have a choice. Their children were murdered before they could develop the technology to fight back. But you made one critical mistake with humanity." "What mistake?" Tan asked, his alien features showing what might have been genuine curiosity. "You touched our children while we were strong enough to hunt you across the galaxy." Grant stepped back, his expression showing the cold calculation that had replaced human fury. "Now we're going to demonstrate what happens to species that declare war on human families. We're not just saving our own children anymore. We're ending your civilization to make sure you never harvest another child from any species anywhere in the galaxy." The broadcast concluded with images from the Proxima facility. Thousands of children from dozens of species, floating in alien chambers while machines slowly murdered them for scientific purposes. The final shot showed human soldiers disconnecting the machinery while alien researchers lay dead around them. Admiral Grant's message to the Confederation was simple and absolute. "You've been harvesting children for 2,000 years because no species was strong enough to stop you. That era ended when you touched human children. We're coming for every facility, every ship, every world that participated in these operations. The stars themselves will burn before we allow another child to die in your experiments." The response from Confederation leadership came within hours. They offered to return all remaining children from all species, disband their research programs, and provide reparations for damages. The message concluded with a plea for rational negotiation between civilized species. Humanity's reply was delivered not through diplomatic channels but through military action. Human fleets launched toward every known Confederation world simultaneously, their hulls carrying weapons designed to cause slow extinction rather than quick death. The message was clear: some crimes demanded more than victory. They demanded the complete elimination of everyone who had participated in child murder. The galaxy was about to learn why human parents had once told their children that monsters weren't real. It was because humans had never encountered anything monstrous enough to hurt their young. That situation had now changed, and the monsters were about to discover what happened when they revealed themselves to humanity. The war for every stolen child was about to begin in earnest, and humanity had no intention of showing mercy to beings who viewed children as experimental specimens. The Confederation had spent 2,000 years believing they were the apex predators of the galaxy. They were about to discover what real predators looked like when their young were threatened. 1 year after the first child disappeared from a Detroit playground, humanity had become the most feared species in the galaxy. The transformation was complete and irreversible, driven by discoveries that went beyond mere child kidnapping into something approaching systematic genocide of innocence itself. The Confederation homeworlds burned under modified stars that humanity had weaponized using captured alien technology, Dr. Thomas. Reed's team had developed stellar manipulation techniques that slowly increased solar radiation output over decades, giving alien populations time to understand their fate while being unable to prevent it. The dying would be slow, inevitable, and absolute. Admiral Lucas Grant stood on the bridge of his flagship as it entered the Kepler system, home to the aquatic depth species that had pioneered consciousness transfer technology. The planet below was already showing signs of atmospheric degradation as its sun burned 10% brighter than normal. The process would take 30 years to complete, but every day brought the alien population closer to extinction. Status report on planetary evacuation attempts. Grant requested from his communications officer, Commander Lisa Park, consulted her displays with the clinical efficiency that had replaced human emotion during the Long War. All Confederation evacuation fleets have been destroyed or turned back. Refugee ships attempting to leave the system are being intercepted and boarded. No alien civilians are being permitted to escape the consequences of their species' crimes. The policy was unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity had declared total war not just against Confederation military forces, but against their entire civilization. Every world that had participated in child harvesting operations was marked for extinction. With their populations facing slow death under weaponized stars, the rescued children had provided intelligence that revealed the true scope of alien crimes. Over 2,000 years of systematic child harvesting had created a galaxy-wide network of consciousness transfer facilities. The database of stolen minds contained patterns from over 3 million young beings, their essence preserved while their bodies were discarded like medical waste. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Kim led boarding operations against the last Confederation research vessel in the Kepler system. Her team moved through the ship with mechanical precision, eliminating alien personnel while securing evidence of their crimes. The rescued children aboard this vessel were from 15 different species, including nearly 400 humans who had been reported missing over the past 8 months. Medical status on the recovered children. Kim requested as her teams worked to disconnect alien monitoring equipment. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, whose own daughter had been among the lunar rescue survivors, checked readings from dozens of consciousness transfer chambers. 67 humans are too far into the process to save. The aliens have been accelerating extraction procedures since we began destroying their facilities. They're trying to complete as many transfers as possible before we can stop them. The systematic murder of children, even as rescue forces approached, had eliminated any possibility of mercy for Confederation species. Human forces had stopped taking adult prisoners months earlier, viewing all members of participating species as complicit in child murder. The galaxy was learning what happened when humans decided that an entire civilization deserved extinction. The final confrontation came when Overseer Tan, the last surviving member of the original Confederation leadership, attempted one desperate negotiation. His species' homeworld was dying under an artificially enhanced sun, his people facing extinction within a generation. He broadcast a message to human forces offering complete surrender and cooperation. Humans of Earth, his translated voice carried across every human ship in the system. The Confederation formally requests terms for ending this conflict. We will return all remaining children from all species. We will disband all research programs. We will provide full access to consciousness transfer technology and databases. We will accept any punishment your species deems appropriate. Admiral Grant's response was broadcast throughout the galaxy, ensuring that every surviving alien civilization understood humanity's position. Overseer Tan, you offer terms to the people you've wronged? You promise to return children you've been systematically murdering. You speak of punishment as if this were a legal proceeding rather than extermination. The Admiral paused, looking directly into the camera as if he could see the alien leader watching from his dying world. You killed 3 million children across the galaxy over 2,000 years. You built an industrial system designed to harvest young minds while discarding their bodies. You did this to dozens of species who were too primitive to fight back, and you plan to do it to humanity. Grant stepped closer to the camera, his voice carrying the cold finality of someone announcing the end of a civilization. We're not punishing your species, Overseer. We're ending your species. Every world that participated in child harvesting will burn under weaponized stars. Every adult who knew about these operations will die slowly over decades. Every trace of your civilization will be erased from galactic history. The broadcast continued with footage from liberated consciousness transfer facilities showing the industrial scale of alien child murder. Warehouses filled with processing equipment, vast databases containing stolen consciousness patterns, and detailed records of harvesting operations spanning millennia. The evidence justified complete extinction in the minds of every human viewer. Tan's final plea revealed the fundamental difference between human and alien thinking. The research subjects were processed humanely according to galactic standards. Their consciousness patterns were preserved for the advancement of all species. The primitive civilizations should have been honored to contribute to scientific progress. Your response is disproportionate to the perceived harm. The alien leader's inability to understand why humans considered child murder to be wrong-sealed. The fate of his species and all Confederation members. Grant's final response was brief and absolute. You still don't understand what you did wrong. That's why you all have to die. The war's conclusion came not through negotiation or surrender, but through systematic extinction. Human fleets had blockaded every Confederation world, preventing evacuation while weaponized stars slowly burned away atmospheric protection. The dying populations could see their fate approaching over decades, but were powerless to prevent it. The consciousness transfer databases were recovered intact, containing the preserved minds of 3 million murdered children from across the galaxy. Human scientists worked to develop technology that might somehow restore these stolen lives, though the project would take generations to complete if it were possible at all. Dr. Emily Sheehan led the effort to catalog and preserve the consciousness patterns, treating each digital ghost as if it were her own child. These patterns represent every young mind the Confederation stole over 2 millennia. We may never be able to restore them to life, but we can ensure their memories are preserved and honored. The memorial constructed on Luna contained the names of every murdered child whose consciousness had been stolen by alien science. 3 million names in dozens of languages, representing species from across the galaxy who had lost their young to Confederation harvesting operations. The monument served as a reminder of why the stars burned and civilizations died. President Maria Wilson addressed the United Nations one final time as the war reached its conclusion. Her speech was broadcast to every human settlement and recorded, for transmission to alien civilizations that might be monitoring human activities. 1 year ago, aliens stole our children and murdered them in the name of science. Today, those aliens and their entire civilization face extinction under stars that humanity has turned into instruments of justice. We did not choose this war, but we will finish it completely. She paused, looking out at representatives whose own children had been rescued from alien facilities or whose young ones had died during consciousness transfer procedures. The galaxy has learned what happens when any species declares war on human families. The lesson is simple: we will burn entire civilizations to ash rather than allow our children to be harmed. The final scene of humanity's first interstellar war took place on Earth itself, in a small garden where rescued children planted trees to honor the murdered young ones from all species. Each tree represented lives lost to alien science, while plaques bore names and languages from across the galaxy. Amy Walsh, one of the first children rescued from the Luna facility, knelt beside a newly planted sapling while her younger brother Tom helped water the small tree. Both children had survived consciousness transfer procedures and returned to families who had never stopped believing they would come home. "Why did the aliens hurt all those kids?" Amy asked her mother, who stood watching the memorial garden. "Take shape." Mrs. Welsh chose her words carefully, explaining a horror that no child should have to understand. Because they thought children from other species weren't as important as their own people. They were wrong about that. Amy looked up at the stars becoming visible in the early evening sky, many of which now burned brighter than they had for billions of years. Human engineering had weaponized entire solar systems, turning the cosmos itself into an instrument of vengeance for murdered children. "Are there other aliens out there who might hurt kids?" Amy asked. Her mother smiled with the cold satisfaction of someone whose species had just demonstrated their protective capacity. "If there are, they know what happened to the ones who tried it. The whole galaxy knows that humans protect all children, not just our own." Above them, the modified stars continued their slow burn, visible reminders that humanity's vengeance had set the cosmos ablaze. Alien civilizations across the galaxy had received the message clearly: touch any child of any species anywhere in the universe, and the humans would find you. And when they found you, they would teach the stars themselves to burn with their fury. The memorial garden grew larger each day as more rescued children added trees for the friends they had lost to alien science. Each planting was accompanied by whispered promises that the murdered young ones would be remembered, honored, and avenged. The dead could rest now, knowing that their killers faced extinction under weaponized suns. In the distance, the lights of human cities reflected off ships preparing for humanity's next mission, establishing monitoring stations throughout the galaxy to ensure that no species would ever again prey upon the young and innocent. The age of child harvesting was over, ended by a species that had proven the cosmos itself was not too high a price to pay for protecting children. The stars would burn for generations, visible proof that some crimes demanded more than justice. They demanded the complete elimination of everyone who had participated in child murder, and humanity had delivered that elimination with scientific precision and parental fury. As night fell over Earth, parents worldwide tucked their children into bed while the weaponized stars shone overhead. The lights they had promised to leave on until their young ones came home would never be turned off, serving as eternal beacons warning the galaxy that humanity stood guard over all children, everywhere, forever.